If you like cars, you need to listen to this video. It doesn't matter if you're into sports cars, JDM tuner cars, K cars and trucks, pickups, muscle cars, hot rods, Jeeps, off-roaders, or historic military vehicles. This message is important for everyone who likes cars. There is a situation brewing that has the potential to affect all people who enjoy cars as a hobby. Several states have banned K trucks or key trucks, Kai trucks, from public roads, preventing these from being registered and even going as far as revoking titles for vehicles that were previously registered. This is very unnerving for me because if they successfully ban these K trucks citing safety concerns, what's stopping them from banning old military vehicles, vehicles that are over 25 years old, vehicles that have been modified, vehicles that have been imported, citing those same safety concerns? First, we need to define K cars and talk about the recent efforts to ban them and the reasons why. Talk about some of the past efforts to ban enthusiast cars and why we should be advocating to our state senators and representatives to ensure that we can continue to enjoy cars as a hobby. So, K cars are a type of vehicle that are made for the Japanese domestic market. They are spelled K-E-I. They are the smallest category of Japanese expressway legal motor vehicles. So, in Japan, they are expressway legal, which means they can be driven on highways. They are not the small golf cart type things that are made exclusively for off-road use and usually are speed limited to 25 miles an hour. These vehicles are capable of top speeds in excess of 60 miles an hour. Now, these vehicles come in many configurations, from cars to vans to pickup trucks, and they make up about 30 to 40% of all cars on the road in Japan. The idea is these small cars, especially the trucks, pack a whole lot of utility in a small, efficient package for urban environments. However, these trucks even come in 4x4 models. Now, these trucks cannot be purchased new in the United States. That is because they haven't gone through the EPA and the IAHS safety and emissions standards. However, according to U.S. law, they can be imported into the United States after a 25-year embargo period, meaning that according to U.S. law, you can legally import these vehicles to the United States for on-road use after 25 years. That is an important allowance carved into federal law. This allows people to import many cool, interesting cars that were never made available in the United States. Whether you want the Audi AS6 station wagon once it reaches the 25-year mark, a British Roadster or JDM sports car, or a Holden Ute, or a Unimog. You can import it if you jump through the right hoops and spend enough money. K-trucks really caught on with a subgroup of American auto enthusiasts. Well, first of all, they look cool, they're really utilitarian, and they are very small pickup trucks that you just can't find in the United States anymore. Let me know if you want a comprehensive video on why small trucks aren't a thing anymore. I've seen a lot of videos on this platform talking about why small trucks are no longer available in the United States, but no one really goes over all the reasons. Every one of them goes over just one or two reasons. So if you want me to compile all the reasons together into one video, let me know. In Vermont, I know one dealership that imports a few of these every year. They're used on small farms, especially orchards and vineyards, because they're small enough to fit between the rows of crops, but they're still big enough to hold a good amount of crops, more so than something like a John Deere Gator or other UTV. It can also transport those crops to market at highway speeds. So you get the advantages of a pickup truck or a larger vehicle while still being able to fit into those small rows where a tractor or a utility vehicle would normally be used. It's the best of both worlds. Anyway, people were importing these old trucks and registering them in their states and driving them on the road, and no one was having any issues whatsoever. That is until the American Association of Motor Vehicles came and stuck their nose into it. First off, what is the AAMV? The AAMV, the best way I can explain it is it's like the NCAA for departments of motor vehicles. And that's not even a perfect analogy because the NCAA sets rules for college sports. But this, it's just a loose association that states departments of motor vehicles subscribe to, and it helps guide policy decisions. So, it does not set rules. It is not backed by a government agency. Basically, what it boils down to is all the DMVs come together, they talk about what's going on, and they make sure that their rules are fairly consistent between states. Things like their definitions match up, their highway signage is the same, etc. It purely functions as an advisor. Well, they advise that K-trucks are dangerous. At first, it was just them saying so, and they've been saying this for years. But then, the IIHS, who does crash tests and safety reports, did a crash test supposedly between a K-truck and a Ford Ranger and compared the results. We'll get into that later. Now, I would like to remind everyone that the IIHS is also not a government body in charge of setting regulations. They function more like the NCAA and advise regulations and test vehicles to see if they meet these minimum standards. I also want to point out the inherent flaws in their testing because I am a scientist after all. First, and the biggest one, they did not test a K-truck. They tested something called a low-speed vehicle, or LSV. A low-speed vehicle is something like a UTV. It is speed limited to 25 miles an hour, and some states allow these vehicles to be driven in neighborhoods where traffic is traveling at a low speed. However, some states do not, and each state might have their own specific regulation of them. Think of them like glorified four-wheelers. Now, because these are available new, and the reason why you can get them new is because they don't technically classify as motor vehicles, so they aren't subject to the same import restrictions. Because they were able to get these new, they tested it against a Ford Ranger of the exact same era, which is a much bigger vehicle, which we can talk about in that video about small pickup trucks, because now small pickup trucks are what full-size pickup trucks were 10-15 years ago. Now, when you test a 2016 Toyota Yaris against a 2016 Ford F-150, what do you think is going to happen? Which one do you think is going to fare better? Crash testing a small car into a much bigger car is always going to lead to bad outcomes for the small car. Also, if they actually bothered to understand the difference between a K-truck and an LSV, hint, expressway legal, and they tested a 1996 K-truck, it would not meet today's safety standards. And you know why that is? Because it was made in 1996. Front airbags weren't even required till 1998. If you were to compare any vehicle from the mid-90s to today's standards, of course it would be abysmal. Because of this flawed test by the IAHS, which didn't even test the thing that the AAMV was trying to ban, the AAMV was like, hey, look, we got the proof, these things are dangerous. And so they went to all their member states and were like, hey, these things, they're dangerous. Get them off the roads. Get them off the roads now. We need to ban these. We need to ban things. We need to do something. Won't somebody please think of the children? Now, I don't know the order of when these states started banning K-trucks, but Maine, Georgia, and Texas were the first states that I was hearing about. They either drafted new policies or laws. Now, you have to keep in mind the legal difference between a policy and a law. Laws go through due process. Typically, laws are drafted as bills. They are voted on by Congress. They are signed by the governor, or in case of federal laws, the president. And they usually are subject to some sort of judicial review. Now, this might be a very quick review, or if the law is challenged, typically it goes before the Supreme Court, and then that law goes through further judicial review to determine whether that law is allowed to be in place. Now, when it comes to policy, this is typically bureaucratically decided, and a government entity, in this case the state's DMV, or Department of Motor Vehicles, decides on this new policy. Now, the Department of Motor Vehicles, they don't have a limitless power. Their power is only as much as the executive branch allows them to use, and their role is to interpret and implement laws, not create their own laws. Now, it will be important later as we discuss how these events have unfolded. It's important whether the ban was enacted through policy changes or through laws. And how these bans are being reversed is kind of decided by whether they are in fact laws or if they were policy changes. So not only were these states denying new registrations, they were sending letters to people who had already registered their vehicles saying, your registration is now void, you cannot drive on the road. Naturally, without refunding the registration fee, of course. Now, that list of states has grown to include Rhode Island, New York, and Pennsylvania. At least the Keystone State decided to grandfather in existing vehicles, although forcing them to be registered as antiques, which does come with added complexity. Typically, with antique vehicles, you're limited to drive a certain number of miles a year, or you're limited to drive to specific events, and the insurance on registered antique vehicles may be different. Texas actually reversed the course on K-trucks because the change was enacted at the level of policy and not law. Some good old-fashioned First Amendment petitioning of the government caused the governor to step in, leading the DMV to reversing their policy change. They did this by outlining a few key facts. Pun definitely intended. K-trucks are not LSVs or utility vehicles or 25-mile-an-hour speed-limited mini trucks or neighborhood vehicles or whatever. Different states call them different things. But just outlining the difference between these two and the fact that K-trucks are capable of driving at highway speeds and in fact are expressway legal, meaning highway legal vehicles in Japan, can be helpful. And outlining the fact that that test that they're using as evidence isn't even testing the thing that they're trying to ban. Also pointing out that K-trucks are legal to import as motor vehicles, and this is the important part, as motor vehicles, under the Imported Safety Compliance Act of 1988, which is a federal law. Basically, when they started having these safety standards, the federal law, at the time when they were drafting it, they said, if a vehicle is over 25 years old, you can import it as a motor vehicle, meaning for on-road use, if it is over 25 years old, and it doesn't have to meet safety compliance standards. Also pointing out the fact that banning these vehicles had negatively impacted small businesses in the state, and restricted personal freedom helped out quite a bit. Like I said, these small vehicles are great for small businesses. The ban on K-trucks in Massachusetts has also been recently reversed.
The Registry of Motor Vehicles has sort of flip-flopped, first telling drivers no. But as WBZ's Christina Rex reports, K-car owners have convinced the state to reverse the ban for now.
After pushback from this small but passionate coalition, the board reversed course Wednesday.
And so we're happy to announce that starting today, September 18th, we started registering these vehicles again.
Believe it or not, I almost bought one of these vehicles a few years back, and I probably will buy one someday. Even if you think that they're ugly or useless little vehicles, you should still care if they are banned. The policy change in Maine says that the vehicles that do not meet the federal emissions and safety standards are off-road vehicles. Well, they specifically use it to target K-trucks, and many other states target K-trucks in name or essence. The policies are often more vague, which could apply to any old and or imported vehicles. When you buy a Humvee at auction from GovPlanet, well, it used to be that there was a disclaimer that these vehicles do not meet federal safety and emission standards. That's because the government can ignore the laws that it creates for the people. I don't know, some things have changed and those warnings are no longer there, so I don't know what's going on with that. But when the Humvee was originally made, it was meant to be only for the military. It was supposed to be like the Grumman LLV. These vehicles do not have VIN numbers, and every single one that the Postal Service no longer uses is completely destroyed. There are only like 5 of these that are legally owned by people. And that's only because Grumman accidentally made more than the Postal Service actually asked for. So the remaining ones were given VIN numbers and sold commercially. On a side note, is anyone curious why you can't buy a used UPS van? Anyway, around 2003, the military started to auction off their old Humvees as they had done with their M35, M211s, CUCVs, Jeeps, and other utility vehicles before it. However, people started to come into problems registering them because they didn't meet federal safety and emission standards. Also, people said they were impractical, no one needs them, they're too big and slow, they're unsafe on our roads, they're a weapon of war. Even the ones over 25 years old, the DMVs would make policies, and I recall some states even making laws preventing these from being registered. Well, after some lobbying by the historic military vehicle enthusiasts, several states started to revise their policies and even enacting laws to ensure that Humvees could be registered in the state. The same thing happened to hot rods. States used to ban hot rods back in the day. Now, most states have provisions for them as antique vehicles. Some states, like Vermont, have a specific registration class for hot rods. So, whether you're into old trucks, military trucks, sports cars, JDM cars, K-trucks, or hot rods, the problem with the justification that's being used to ban K-trucks right now is that it could be applied to a whole range of vehicles that people love and enjoy. Old cars are dangerous, and they don't meet the ever-tightening safety and emission standards. Pretty soon, all the registrations will be revoked for cars older than 10 years, and we'll all be forced to get brand new cars. Well, that's a little too extreme and a little too far down that slippery slope. It's no stretch to say that a Humvee that was not made to meet safety and emission standards, even for the time that they were actually made, is too dangerous for U.S. roads. The same logic could easily be applied to vehicles like the Dodge Viper. And really, any vehicle made before 1990, and any imported vehicle that was never sold in the U.S., or any modified vehicle. As you can probably imagine, as someone who owns historic military vehicles and antique tractors and generally likes things like motorcycles, antique vehicles, hot rods, and K-trucks, these new regulations are setting a dangerous precedent. I'm not a fan of these new regulations trying to limit the cars that we can own. I brought up motorcycles just a second ago there. If you're thinking about it from a point of view of saving lives, and you're saying that these vehicles are dangerous, well, motorcycles are dangerous, yet they're still being made even to this day. My point of view is that everything comes with certain risk. Leaving your house, even staying in your house and not leaving your house, comes with a certain amount of risk. that you accept. If you want to own a vehicle and it's old and you know that the vehicle it does not meet the modern safety standards, if you are aware of that, why is it anyone else's business that you choose to drive this? You decide that the appeal of the vehicle, you like the vehicle enough to take on the risk of driving that vehicle. What worries me about these laws in particular is the fact that it can be used to ban a whole wide range of vehicles that people enjoy. And cars have been a staple of American culture for a long time, and limiting your ability to own certain cars has the possibility of eroding some of that culture. So, what can we do about it? What's going to be the call to action? The best thing you can do is write your congressman. If you like cars, write your state senators and representatives and tell them about how much you enjoy cars and how regulations like the ones we discussed here really limit your ability to enjoy the hobbies that you are passionate about. Write about how the tests used to ban these cars are fundamentally flawed, and write about how when you choose to drive your own vehicle, you are not putting other people at risk. You are just trying to enjoy your life in a responsible manner. Also going to car meets and car shows and just ensuring that the community of people that enjoy vehicles of all types stays strong is very important. If you have an old military truck, there are some modifications that you can make to it that make it a lot safer to drive on the roads. This video is all about that. And if you don't have an old military truck but would like to buy one, here is my complete guide on how to buy an old military truck.